everyone, this is Heather. Thank you so much for joining me. Today I have a card tutorial for you for a fun friend card. If you have somebody that maybe you haven't seen in a while and you want to get together. This cute tree with the hammock card has a little sentiment that says we need to hang out more. And I've cut an opening in the front so that the hammock kind of swings free, with some cloud paper on the inside. And I really love the look of colored pencils on this sort of sandy Kraft brown cardstock. It really makes them kind of pop and stand out. You probably want to use maybe slightly brighter colors than you normally would, because that Kraft color is going to kind of mute those colored pencils down just a little bit. So that's what we're doing today. And you're going to need a sheet, a whole sheet of Kraft colored cardstock. And so for the card base, I've cut my 8.5 by 11 cardstock in half and scored and folded for the card base. And then we're going to need most of the other part of the cardstock for some additional stamping, and then also some cloud paper. And I'm using the cloud paper from the Myths and Magic from Stampin' Up from the new Occasions catalog, as well as a stamp set from Stampin' Up from the Occasions catalog called In the Trees. This is such a fun set. It's got this great tree with all these accessories that you can hang from the tree. You could stamp two and put the accessories in between, or like I'm doing, kind of have it off the edge. So there's the hammock that we're using today. There's flags and a banner. There's some kind of strings for the banner, some lights. Then this is like and at first it took me a little while to realize what this was. This is a glow around the lights, which is really fun. There's birds and a couple different types of grass, some flowers, this adorable squirrel, which I think is my favorite part of this whole set. This tiny little squirrel is just so cute. Clouds, lots of great sentiment. So this is In the Trees, available from Stampin' Up in the new Occasions catalog. So let's go ahead and get started. Like I said, I've got the my card base folded in half, and I'm using the largest stitched shaped circle die from Stampin' Up, and I want to put this on my card base and tape it in place so it's kind of centered up and down and over to the right, but make sure you don't get too far over. You want to leave, you know, a little bit of space there. So I'm taking some repositionable tape and taping that to the front of my card base. And then I'm going to open it up. This is very important. Don't run it through closed. I'm going to open it up and run it through my die cut machine. So I've run this through my die cut machine, and I'm going to carefully remove the die. So now we have this circle opening in the front of our card. And then I'm also going to use the exact same circle, and I'm going to run that through my die cut machine on the cloud paper. And it's going to look like this. So now I'm going to do some stamping on the front of the card, and I want to grab a scrap piece of paper, just some printer paper, to slip inside so that I don't get any ink on the inside of my card. I am using Memento ink. It's just kind of my favorite black go-to ink, but you could use any black ink that you would like. Because we're working with colored pencils, you don't really need to worry about bleeding or smearing or anything like that. So I'm going to ink up the tree, and for this first part I don't really need the top of the tree to be completely stamped out, because we're going to cover it up. So what you want is the trunk of the tree to be inked up really well. And I'm going to stamp directly on the front of my card, and part of it is going to go off the edges. So some will go off onto the scrap paper and some will go off the edge of the card. Just make sure that the trunk looks really nice, like that. And now we're going to take the grass and just add a few little grass areas here and there. A couple over this way, up here. And now I'm going to get my little squirrel, and I just want him running through the grass. So I'm just going to stamp my little squirrel there. So we're putting together our scene. And then in the upper right hand corner, I'm going to stamp the words that say we need to hang out more. Like so. So I have all the stamping done on the front of my card, and I want to grab my rest of my sheet, and I'm going to stamp the tree again, and this time I want to make sure that the tree top is really well inked. So make sure you've got a good coverage. Make sure that center's well inked there. And again, you don't have to worry about getting the entire tree. I'm just worried about the tree top. Push down really good and hard on that. And that looks good. And if you get some ink on your surface, just wipe that off. And then we're also, on this extra piece, going to stamp out the hammock. Turn my cardstock here a little bit and stamp out my hammock. And I noticed on this particular cardstock that it seemed to have a little bit of a coating on it, and that it took a little while for the ink to dry. So you can, if that happens to you, you can either let it air dry, or I'm just going to use my my embossing heat tool set on low real quick, and I'm just going to make sure that all of that ink is well dried and heat set before we move on to the colored pencil. Okay, so my ink is nice and dry now, and I'm gonna apply some color with some colored pencils. So Prisma Colored Pencils are my very favorite colored pencils. I've been using them for years and years. When I first learned to stamp, I took a class. The instructor recommended these, that they went really well with stamping, and I've used them ever since. I've tried a couple other different brands, but I just love the way that they blend. They have a lot of wax in them, so they blend really nicely. You don't get that scratchy line. You get a really smooth coverage of color. Just cannot recommend the Prisma Colored Pencils enough. But if you have other colored pencils, you use whatever you like. You can also use other coloring mediums on this. Like I said, you just kind of want to use maybe a little bit brighter colors than you normally would with this kind of craft colored paper. So I'm using 2 shades of green. I'm using apple green. I'm using this pretty bright chartreuse. And then I am using burnt ochre, which is a brown. And then this one I accidentally sharpened the wrong end, and I sharpened off the color name. I'm pretty sure it's just cream. It's just a nice basic cream color. So on the trunk of the tree, on our card base, I'm just going to color in the trunk of the tree. And if you want to, you know, add a lot of layers and shading and everything, you can. I wanted this to be kind of quick and easy, but if you want more shading, you feel free to do that. So I've added the brown to the trunk of the tree. I'm going to pull over my tree top and do the same, just down a little ways past where the leaves of the tree are. So I've got the trunk, and then I'm also going to color the top of my squirrel. So I'm going to leave just a little bit of the underneath because I want him to have a little bit of a cream colored belly. So I'm just going to color in the top half of my squirrel, and then I'm going to grab my cream and just give him, and see how nice and bright that cream shows up on that craft. It's really pretty. So now he has kind of a little little cream belly there. And now I'm going to grab my 2 greens. We're done with the cream and the brown. And I'm going to add sort of chunks, if you will, of color. Just sort of sections and circles of this brighter green. Just kind of space it out. And lay down lots of that pretty bright color, just in different sections. Real easy, simple, don't overthink it. And then we're going to go in with the darker green and kind of fill in between. And that kind of gives you a nice two-tone shade. It gives a more realistic look to your tree. So if you look at a tree, it has multiple greens. And again, if you wanted to get more detailed and add a lot of different greens in, you could. You could also do fall colors if you want fall leaves. So just kind of fill that in. So now we have this nice kind of two-toned, more realistic look. And on the card base, I'm just going to go around the edges just a little bit, because when this is popped up, you can sort of see underneath just a little bit. So I just like to add just a little bit around the edges just to make sure it kind of blends in nicely and it's not kind of blank and plain underneath there. So I've added just a little bit. And then on the grass, I'm going to use both the colors, and I'm kind of following along, just sort of doing a zigzag, just following along the stamp with the darker, and I go back over with the lighter again, just kind of blends those two colors together and gives it a little bit more of a realistic look. So there's the grass. So for my hammock, I wanted a little bit of a stripe on there. So I'm going to follow along that kind of curve of the hammock and lay down just a stripe of the light green, back to my darker green, add another stripe there, come back with the lighter, add another stripe. It just adds again a little bit more of a realistic look. So now I've got a fun striped hammock. And now I'm going to cut these two pieces out. And as you can see, I got a little bit of a smudge. I guess the ink wasn't completely dry, but that's okay because we're going to cut this out, so not a big deal. So I'm just going to follow along the tree, and I did leave a little bit of a border, and I'm just going to cut off some of the trunk there and just follow along, cutting out the top of the tree. And this is really loose. You don't have to be real precise. Just kind of wiggling, get some of that out of the way. Just kind of wiggling my cardstock back and forth just to get a general idea of the shape of that tree. So there's my tree top cut out. Now I'm going to cut out my hammock. Get some of this excess out of the way. And when you're cutting out, you want to leave a little bit extra cardstock on the edges here so that we can adhere that to our card. So let me get this cut out. Again, just leaving a little bit of a border. And so when I get here to the end, I'm going to leave just a little bit of that extra Kraft on the end so that I can adhere it. And you will see why in just a second. So I've left just a little bit of that on the edges. And now we're going to bring our card base over. And we have that circle that we die cut out of the cloud paper. I'm going to adhere that down just with some regular adhesive. So I'm just going to close my card, kind of line that up in the center, push that down really well, and lift that up. So now it lines up with the circle that we cut. I'm going to bring our tree top over, and I'm going to cut some little foam squares here and put that on the back of our tree top. And this is going to hang off the edge of the card just a bit. So we want to line that up as well as we can with the image that's underneath, and then turn that over and trim that excess off. You just cut right through that foam tape and everything just so that it's smooth along the edge of the card. And now we're going to put the hammock down with a couple of glue dots. So I'm turning it over, and on the ends, going to apply a glue dot on each end. Peel that backing paper off. And the left end of the hammock is going to kind of be tucked up under the tree top, and the other will go over to the edge of the card. And then you're going to open it up because probably part of your glue dot is maybe still showing through. So I used a powder tool. This is an EK Success powder tool. Basically turns anything that's sticky not sticky. So if you have a sticker or something you want to turn into an embellishment, you can apply that to where those glue dots are. Oh, and I've got some of my foam tape sticking out. Okay, so learn from my mistake here and make sure that when you adhere your tree top down that you don't have any of your foam tape showing. So I'm actually gonna lift this off and see if I can't trim that off real quick. Okay, so mistakes do happen. It's something that happens to all of us. So lesson learned, make sure that you don't put your foam tape all the way over so that it looks a little more clean on the inside. Make sure that that's not sticking. And there's our card. So this is a really fun card to send to a friend that maybe you haven't seen in a while. You want to get together and hang out. I hope you enjoyed this card tutorial. Please check out my channel. I've got lots of other card tutorials and some product reviews. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and think about subscribing. I would really appreciate it. I hope you have a fantastic day. This is Heather. Bye.